Hey y'all, I wanted to sort of provide some context for what we're building here, or what I'm building. I'm building a couple forks for this bike right here, which is a early to mid 90s Guerciotti Cyclocross machine. I've done some mods to it. It was sold to me by Tom Sullivan at Sullivan Cycles down in Midtown in Santa Cruz back in the day. Anyway, what a great guy he was. Tom Sullivan, if you're listening, thank you, thank you, thank you for all your help and inspiration. And just, you ran a great shop. I'm very sad to see that you ended up having to close up, and what an era you represented in Santa Cruz cycling. So, at any rate, I grabbed this from Tom. I bought the frame new and I built it up myself with a mishmash of mostly campy parts and whatever I could get my hands on at the time. So, what I would like to do, I might mention that this bike was also in a critical mass back in also in the 90s, and in that riotous one, if you'll remember, a couple of riotous ones in a row. One of those riotous ones, I was run over by a van, and it was totally on purpose. It was all caught on film, and even though we had it on film and we had the guy's, we had his license plate number dead to rights, the SFPD were no help at all. In fact, they were the opposite of help. They hindered the investigation, which is really intense experience for me. Yeah, I lost all respect for the SFPD at that point. Maybe they're different people now, who knows? But then they really, under Willie Brown, they had nothing going on, in my opinion. At any rate, here is the bike. So I was run over by a van in this bike. It was, the rear triangle was tweaked. I pulled over with my knee. I bent the triangle back into place, trued it up, and grabbed the rear wheel and trued that up, and I, with a wobble and a hop, finished the mass, which was kind of interesting. So this came with a Reynolds fork, an original Reynolds fork that was painted to match, and at some point the fork broke. The steel must have been overheated at the crown, and it broke, and I rode home on one fork blade, which was it's possible. And Tom, I took it back to Tom Sullivan, and he felt real bad, and he gave me this rock lobster fork, and it's a mountain bike fork, and I was like, okay, well, that's cool. And this is one of my first brazing projects ever. See that? I left the old bosses on and put some new bosses on, and there's the travel agent, if you all remember those. This bike never was set up perfectly. It was always kind of like, shoot. I mean, it worked well, but it was never perfect. And I'd like to make it perfect. I want to make it a single speed with a nice truss fork, riser bars, shorten the cockpit a little bit, single speed, really get it going, do it some justice, give it some justice. Love this bike, love the geometry, love the way the Thron tubing feels. And I've modeled all of my cyclocross bikes after this one, which was it's hard to top what the Guerciotti boys were doing and still are. So yeah, so that's the brief history of this bike and the project that we're doing, and we'll keep on going until it's finished. Hey y'all, this fork is a cyclocross disc truss fork with an aluminum steer tube and 15 millimeter through axle dropouts. That's a mouthful, but we're going to build it here. So where we left off prior to Christmas 2017 was this place here that you see before you. We have the crown, which is already braced, and I have two of them. Where's the other one? Here it is. Finally, some motion. There's that. And then chucked up in the vise already is one of these binder bolts. And you see the line there, that is my take line, not to exceed. What I'm going to do is miter these binder bolts onto this, and then that way I can slip my aluminum steer tube in and clamp it down. And then that's the step necessary to chucking this up and milling the crown to accept the fork legs. So where are we? So I have the mill centered, and I'm going to back you up, and I'm going to chuck up my hole saw, and then we're going to do some cutting. I'm going to switch you over to time-lapse mode prior to cutting because it's very loud due to my phase converter. So anyway, I'm going to show you my tree mill here. This is a beauty. Sorry. Look at that. A Tree 2 UVR. I received this from a gentleman at Good Times Bicycles back in the day. He got out of building, which was a shame because he was a nice guy and a really great builder. Anyway, he gave me a good deal. Anyway, so I'm going to chuck this up and then do some cutting, and then I'll show you what I did. Success. Looks like we have a nice even, I don't know, what do you call this, a cutoff remnant? That means we hit it at 0 in terms of angle, incident angle, and everything looks cool here. I'm going to take it out of the vise and see how she fits. Sorry about the shaky cam. It's not the east or the west side. No, it's not. It's not the north or the south side. No, it's not. It's the dark side. What is thy bidding, thy master? It's a disaster, Skywalker, we're after. Okay, enough of that. Star Wars gangster rap. Seems to be looking good. Ooh. I wish you could see this miter. Let's see. There it is. There's no light in there. There's a little shadow, you see that? Flat down, that's just a perfect miter. Nice. Let's do the next one. All right, so the miters are done. They look pretty good. I haven't cleaned them up yet, but I'll take them over to the file station, clean these guys up. But you see, that's kind of perfect. I mean, I can sweat that in and it is going to make a fabulous joint. Look at that. So yeah, so I'm going to clean these binder bolts up, and then I'm going to clean the brass up around the top here, some of these fillets, so that this thing will fit in here nicely, steel against steel, and then I'll fillet braze everything together. You can see that I started to use the file on this, and you know, I could do it, but Jesus, it's like riffling. I would be there all day. And as my pop-up would say, that's why someone stayed up all night inventing the Dremel tool. When I was young, I wanted to use the Dremel tool to make a little wood carving. My mom said, no, you can't use it, you're too young. So anyway, I used it, I grabbed it when she wasn't home, and I put this little saw blade attachment. It was a little quarter-size saw blade spinning at 10,000 RPM or something like that. So I was sawing, and I was holding it in my hand like this, and I was trying to carve something out, and the thing bit in, went up and over the piece of work, and wham, right into my hand. It bogged down all 10,000 RPMs and just went, and I yanked it out, looked down at my hand, a giant cut. I couldn't tell my mom what had happened. So I grabbed a needle and thread, and I stitched my hand from about right here all the way around, where is that scar? To right there. There to there. 4 stitches. And as a result of that today, look at that, I got a little advantage that no one else or very few other people have. I can actually palm a Frisbee. More on that later. Just in case you didn't believe me. And actually, this is kind of like cheating. This is not a regulation disc. I mean, I can do this with my right hand. But a regulation ultimate Frisbee disc, which is quite a bit larger than that. I can palm it. I can almost palm this one from the top. Anyway, little story. That's why you should always listen to your mom. Well, there we are, all mitered up, prepped. I just have to wash them up in my crystal clear wash bucket or water bucket, and flux them and braze them. So let's see if I can get you, oops, a little closer to the action. So there we go. You can see, you know, these are pretty close. And they kind of self-center, which is nice. I'll have to configure something to kind of hold that in place while it brazes. I don't know, not wasting, but I'm spending a lot of time on this because it's, you know, it's kind of the foundation for the rest of the fork. It's pretty important that these pinch bolts do their job, because they're going to be accepting a lot of stress, and you don't want them to move, obviously. So I guess next step, I will bring you over to the torch and put you on time lapse yet again. So you can see my setup here for brazing the crown, or at least the boss onto the crown, or the what is that, binder bolt onto the crown. I just wanted to say a quick word here. So anyway, the last crown, I lost the footage because it was, I put it on slow-mo, so we got a bunch of slow motion photography. So I just wanted to say that what you're seeing in these videos, and you know, on my Flickr page and on my what do you call it, Instagram, what you're seeing there is just the way I do it and the way I've taught myself to do things, watching other people on you know, on the web, and you know, I'm self-taught. No one taught me how to braze, how to weld. No one taught me bicycle geometry. No one taught me you know, machining. Nothing. I just started from scratch out of necessity. Honestly, the story of how I got started, fillet brazing, started with the Burning Man years ago, 95, something like that. My friend had an idea for a sculpture, and we needed to learn how to weld in order to put that together. So we went to the flea market, bought the materials. I started in. That's a whole nother story. I'm not going to get into it, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that there are 1,000 ways to do things, and you know, honestly, there are several ways that I even do things. Sometimes I don't even remember how I did something before, and I come up with some other way, right? So at any rate, there's 1,000 ways to do things, and you know, there's a lot of very smart people out there. There's a lot of talented builders in the internet community. I'm humbled to be in that group of talent, and anyway, we all learn from each other, and as I said, there are many ways of doing things. This is my way. Other people have their own way, and this is just sort of this build is the culmination of what I've learned about machining, about bicycle geometry, about whatever, right? This is all it. So anyway, this is my gig, and I hope you guys learn from my triumphs and my mistakes. Certainly there will be a lot of them. I try to be really meticulous in what I do, so that at least the any mistakes will be glaringly obvious. I don't try to hide things. It's partly why I don't paint my bicycles, because I just love the whole thing out in front of you. Anyway, this is the setup. This is the setup. Basically just a fulcrum and a counterweight. This is how I do most of my braze-ons, whatever. This is one way to get things to stick while you gently tease them into place. So I'm going to flux this up. I'm going to torch it. My goal is to tack it here, tack it there, and that way the cooling won't, I want this thing to stay right on the metal as I use capillary action to tease the brass in underneath and around, and make full contact with that steel, and then build up a nice fillet. Also, I might mention that I had a real nice miter on the bottom of this, and then I took a file and I actually chamfered all the edges, because you actually don't want a perfect miter. You want the brass to be able to form a fillet inside there and then get sucked in, right? So anyway, I put a little chamfer there, and that gives the brass something to sit in, and that's that. So at this stage, you got to think, oh, which side do I want the bolts on? If you're messing around with your fork and you got the Allen keys going, and which side do you want those on? So I've decided, and I'll go over that later. But anyway, let me put it on time lapse. We'll get the torch going and heat this sucker. So here they are. What you see is what you get. That's the binder bolts are brazed in. I think what I'm going to do is cut this video short. This has been a long one. And I'm going to go edit this thing together so that I can get back out here tomorrow and make another one for y'all. Tomorrow, or I should say next video, I'll do the slitting. Once it is slit, I can then clamp it onto a 1-inch steer tube, and then clamp everything in the vise on the and start mitering some tubes. So once we get into tube mitering, it kind of goes pretty quick. So anyway, yeah, so I guess I'll cut it short. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve 2017. Have a safe holiday. Enjoy your last sort of few hours of this pretty amazing year that we've all had. Next year, I promise you, will be completely different. Wow. It's going to be an amazing year. We have hit our stride in this thing called the great democratization of information. And my inspiration for doing these videos is just that. It is a way for me to share my knowledge, my hobby, my sort of passion, my love, and share it with people who might find some entertainment from it or find some use from it. And most importantly, it will inspire you, hopefully, to be creators, because coming into this next era, this next epoch of communication, we are all going to have to be creators in one way or another. And no more consumption of the status quo. We've got to do something different, and that means consuming something different, voting with our dollars, and teaching the world what we're all about. So anyway, so I'm pretty inspired coming into this next year. Hopefully I can keep doing this and see where it goes. Anyway, Happy New Year, everyone. Have a safe holiday.